A cop assaults Steven Seagal's daughter, unaware her father is close by. Aria Seagal never liked using her father's fame to get special treatment. Despite being the daughter of Steven Seagal, one of the world's most recognizable action legends, she preferred living a life as normal as possible. No bodyguards, no flashy outfits, just a peaceful morning jog through Glendale's quiet riverside park, her favorite place to clear her mind. It was early, just after 9 a.m. The sun was soft, families were walking their dogs, and the air smelled faintly of grass and morning dew. Aria, wearing simple black leggings and a faded hoodie, looked like any other young woman trying to stay fit. Nothing about her suggested she came from a famous martial arts dynasty. She stopped near a drinking fountain, catching her breath, tying her hair into a ponytail. She took out her phone to change the music, and that's when she felt someone step behind her. A sharp voice sliced the quiet air. "Hey, you, stop right there." Aria turned around slowly. A police officer, tall and broad-shouldered, marched toward her with an angry, suspicious glare in his eyes. He wasn't calm. He wasn't curious. He looked accusatory from the very first second. "Is something wrong, officer?" Aria asked gently. "Don't play dumb," he snapped. "Let me see some ID." Aria blinked. "ID? What?" "You match the description of someone we're looking for," he said, but his tone made it sound like he didn't actually care about the truth. She tried, politely, to stay calm. "I'm just jogging. I haven't done anything." The officer stepped closer, too close. "Yeah? I'll decide what you've done. Show me your ID." Now, a few people nearby slowed their steps to watch. Something felt wrong. The officer was already heated, acting like she was a threat, even though she hadn't moved an inch. Aria kept her voice steady. "Sir, I'm not refusing. I'm just asking what this is about." His eyes narrowed. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." His tone carried something ugly, suspicion mixed with ego, the kind of tone that made innocent people nervous. Aria didn't know it yet, but what he was about to do would change everything. Because her father, the man people called the real-life action hero, was only a few steps away. Aria raised her hand slightly, showing she wasn't a threat. She had dealt with rude people before, but something about this officer's energy felt different, aggressive, unstable, almost looking for a reason to exert power. "Sir, I'm cooperating," Aria repeated calmly. "I'll show you my ID, but there's no need to raise your voice." The officer scoffed. "You think you can tell me how to do my job?" He stepped even closer, invading her space. Aria instinctively took a step back, not out of fear, but caution. The officer's eyes flickered with irritation. "Oh, so now you're resisting?" He snapped loudly, as if performing for the people around them. "I didn't resist," Aria said softly. "Please don't twist my words." But he already had. He grabbed her wrist, hard. So hard that Aria gasped. Several people nearby stopped walking. A dog barked. Two teenagers paused their skateboards. The tension in the air thickened instantly. "Hey, leave her alone," someone shouted from across the path. But the officer ignored them. "Turn around," he ordered, gripping her wrist tighter. "Hands behind your back." Aria tried to stay calm. "Sir, you're hurting me." "Oh, I'm hurting you," he mocked loudly. "Maybe you shouldn't act suspicious." "I wasn't acting suspicious," she said through clenched teeth. "Yes, you were," he insisted, pulling her arm upward. "I know your type. You think you're above the law." Aria's heart pounded, not from fear, but from disbelief. She had always respected police officers, always believed in calm communication. But this man wasn't interested in truth or respect. He was driven by something else. Ego, anger, power. The officer twisted her arm, forcing her to bend slightly. "Stop it." She didn't do anything. A woman yelled while recording. Another man raised his phone. "This cop is going too far. Someone call internal affairs." But the officer's grip only tightened. "I said turn around," he barked. Aria felt a sharp sting in her wrist as he jerked her again. She winced. "Why are you doing this?" "I didn't break any law." Because I said so, he growled. Now move. This time, Aria's voice cracked, not from fear, but frustration. Please, I haven't done anything wrong. Save it, he spat. People like you always lie. That line hit her. People like you. He didn't know who she was. He didn't know what she stood for. He didn't know the upbringing she had, discipline, respect, emotional control, years of martial arts training. But most importantly, he had absolutely no idea who her father was. Still, Aria didn't yell or fight back. She refused to let anger take over. I am willing to cooperate, she said steadily. Just tell me why you're detaining me. The officer rolled his eyes. I don't need to explain myself to you. You civilians think you deserve answers. You don't. Aria exhaled shakily. I just want to understand. Oh, I'll make you understand, he snarled. He grabbed her other wrist suddenly, now holding both, attempting to pull her arms behind her back for handcuffs. Aria tried not to panic, but the pain shot through her left shoulder. Please stop. You're hurting me, she said again. He smirked. That's the point. A wave of disgust passed through the crowd. A mother yelled, You can't treat a woman like that. Someone else shouted, Officer, she's not resisting. Let her go. But the officer hadn't heard anyone in minutes. He was lost in his own ego. Aria's breathing quickened. Despite all her training, despite all her discipline, she was caught in a situation where reacting physically, even to defend herself, could be twisted into resisting arrest. Walk, the officer ordered, shoving her forward. She stumbled but regained her balance. You're assaulting me. I'm not a criminal. Funny, he sneered. Criminals always say that. Aria's voice was trembling now, not out of fear for herself, but for how far this might go. Why are you treating me like this? Because you're suspicious. And because I can, he said, tightening his hold like a man intoxicated with authority. Gasps echoed from the crowd. Hey man, let her go, a jogger yelled. Dude, what is your problem? But the officer, in his arrogance, didn't realize something critical. His voice, his shouting, his aggression, was echoing through the park, and a certain man, sitting on a bench just a short distance away, heard it. Steven Seagal, sipping tea from a thermos, slowly turned his head toward the commotion. He noticed the crowd first, people gathering, recording, murmuring. Then he saw the officer. Then he saw the girl struggling under his grip. At first, he didn't assume the worst, until he saw her face. His eyes froze. His heartbeat changed. His entire presence shifted. That wasn't just a woman being assaulted. It was his daughter, and the officer who dared lay a hand on her had just made the biggest mistake of his life. Steven Seagal stood up slowly from the park bench, his thermos still in his hand. His expression didn't show rage. Steven wasn't the type to explode. Instead, his face grew calm, too calm. The kind of calm that meant a storm was coming. He watched for a few seconds more, making sure his eyes weren't lying. They weren't. That was Aria, his daughter, being yanked, twisted, and humiliated by an officer drunk with authority. Steven's jaw tightened, but he didn't run toward her. He didn't scream. He didn't break into a sprint like most fathers would. No, Steven Seagal walked. Slow, controlled steps, each footfall heavy and deliberate, like a man who understood exactly how dangerous he could be. Meanwhile, Aria was struggling to keep her footing as the officer pulled her arm upward again. The pain shot through her shoulder like fire, but she refused to cry. She wouldn't give him that satisfaction. Stop resisting, the officer barked again. I'm not resisting, Aria pleaded. You're twisting my arm. Quiet, he shouted, jerking her harder. Aria winced, biting her lip to stop the groan. The officer didn't care. His grip tightened even more, his fingers digging into her skin. Bystanders were shouting now. The entire park was turning into a chaos of voices. Officer, she's complying. She didn't do anything. Let her go. What is wrong with you? But the officer only raised his volume. Nobody talk to me. This is police business. One man yelled back. Then stop assaulting her. The officer pointed at him with his free hand. You want to go to jail too? Back off. Aria's chest rose and fell rapidly. The humiliation was worse than the pain. She hated feeling powerless. She hated being treated like a criminal when she had done absolutely nothing wrong. But she couldn't defend herself. She couldn't even shift her stance. If she made one move, even instinctively, he'd twist it into resisting arrest. She had to stay still, no matter how much it hurt. The officer suddenly grabbed the back of her hoodie and shoved her toward the patrol car. Her breath caught. Stop. Please. Oh, now you want to be polite, he mocked. Aria stumbled toward the car, barely catching herself before her face hit the door. I didn't do anything, she whispered. Save it. You think your little tears will get you out of this? I'm not crying, she said sharply. Yeah? Then I'll give you something to cry about. Those words froze the entire crowd. One woman gasped. Is he seriously threatening her? A man yelled, This is abuse. Someone call the captain. Phones were everywhere now, dozens recording from every angle. This was no longer a casual park scene. This was becoming a public outrage. But none of this noise, none of the yelling, none of the chaos, compared to the silent force walking toward them. Steven Seagal was only 20 feet away now. His eyes never left the officer's hands. In all his years, movies, law enforcement training, martial arts mastery, Steven Seagal had seen real conflict, real violence, real predators. His instincts were sharp, and right now they were screaming at him. This officer wasn't just detaining Aria. He was enjoying it. Back at the patrol car, the officer slammed Aria against the door. The metallic thud echoed across the park. Aria gasped, both shoulders aching. Ow. Please, stop, she said, her voice cracking. Oh, now you're in pain? Boo-hoo, he taunted. People shouted in disbelief. What is wrong with you, man? Let her go, dude. Your badge doesn't make you God. The officer ignored everyone. He pulled out his handcuffs and grabbed Aria's wrists to force them behind her. Aria struggled to keep her balance. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do, he interrupted sharply. And you're lucky I'm not doing worse. Aria's breath trembled, partly from pain, partly from anger. I asked you why you stopped me. You never answered. You don't deserve an answer, he snapped. Aria finally looked up at him with piercing frustration. You're abusing your power. The officer's face twisted. Oh, really? You think you're some kind of expert? No, she said softly. I just know right from wrong. He shoved her wrist upward again. Too far, crossing the threshold of pain. Aria's voice cracked as she gasped. That was it. That was the moment Steven Seagal's entire posture changed. He stopped walking. He stood still. And then, he moved with purpose. The crowd noticed him before the officer did. Wait, is that? Oh my God, that's Steven Seagal. Someone whispered loudly. Does he know that girl? Another said, Bro, that's his daughter. Look at his face. A ripple of recognition swept through the crowd like electricity. The officer heard the noise swell behind him. Still gripping Aria, he snapped over his shoulder. Everyone back up. But he didn't finish. Because when he turned fully, he saw a figure standing only a few feet away. Steven Seagal. Arms relaxed but powerful. Eyes cold but controlled. A presence so intense that even the wind felt like it paused. The officer blinked, confused. Can I help you? He asked sarcastically. Steven's voice was quiet, dangerously quiet. Yes, he said. The officer frowned. And who exactly are you? Steven stepped closer, his shadow falling across the officer. I'm the father, he said. The officer's smirk died instantly, and the crowd erupted. For several long seconds, the street felt frozen. The officer continued holding onto Ayako's wrist, his grip tight and uncompromising, while she struggled not to cry. The tension had spread far beyond the small space between them. The entire block seemed to be holding its breath. But now, people were finally starting to pay attention. A few onlookers stepped closer, whispering among themselves, glancing repeatedly between Ayako and the cop. One woman took off her sunglasses and squinted carefully at Ayako's face, as if trying to match her memory with what she was seeing. Suddenly, an older man in a gray jacket let out a soft gasp. Wait, isn't she? Seagal's daughter. A couple of heads snapped around. Seagal? Steven Seagal? Another man muttered. Yeah, she looks exactly like her. I saw her in some interview clips with him. The whispers began spreading like sparks catching dry leaves. People pulled out their phones, some recording, others texting friends, and a few searching images online to verify. It only took a minute before murmurs turned into certainty. That is her. No way. What's a cop doing grabbing Steven Seagal's daughter like that? Does he even know who she is? The cop, however, remained completely oblivious, too wrapped up in his own authority to realize the storm he was walking into. What are you all staring at? He barked at the crowd. She's resisting. Ayako shook her head fiercely. No, I'm just trying to pull my hand away. You grabbed me without warning. Her voice cracked from stress, and instantly, a wave of sympathy rolled through the gathered onlookers. Someone shouted from behind the crowd. Hey, she didn't do anything. Let her go. The officer's face flushed with annoyance. You people don't get to tell me how to do my job. But the more he pushed, the more the crowd pushed back. A teenager holding his phone high said loudly, Dude, we're recording everything. You're in big trouble. The cop shot him a glare. Put the phone down. No, the boy said firmly. Not when you're treating a woman like that. More phones rose into the air. The officer's grip tightened on Ayako's wrist, but so did the eyes on him. His posture stiffened as he realized this was no longer a quiet confrontation he could control. This was becoming a scene. A public one. A documented one. Ayako swallowed hard, her heart pounding. She still hadn't used her identity as a shield. She didn't want to. She wanted to be treated with respect simply because she was a human being, not because of who her father was. But as the whispers grew louder, she felt the shift happening around her. People weren't just watching anymore. They were choosing sides. And for the first time, the officer sensed he was losing the crowd. His expression faltered, confusion sliding across his face. Everyone step back, he ordered, raising his voice. This is a lawful stop. Lawful, a woman snapped. For what? Walking. You grabbed her without cause, another man shouted. The cop pointed at Ayako. She fits the description of a suspect. Oh please, someone cut in. That's the excuse every bad cop uses. A ripple of agreement rolled through the crowd. Ayako's eyes glistened. The experience was terrifying, humiliating, overwhelming, but the support around her, strangers standing up for her, made her breathe a little easier. Still, the officer wasn't backing down. He puffed out his chest, trying to reassert control. Back away, all of you, or I'll escalate the situation. A hush fell. Even Ayako froze. Escalate. What more was he planning to do? Before he could act, a deep, steady voice rose from the back of the crowd, slicing through the tension like a blade. What situation, exactly, are you planning to escalate? People turned. Some gasped. Some stepped aside instinctively, clearing a path. Because there, walking toward the scene with a calm that was somehow more intimidating than anger, was Steven Seagal himself. Tall, silent, eyes locked onto the officer gripping his daughter's wrist. The crowd parted around him like water around a stone. Whispers erupted instantly but quietly, like the hum of a rising storm. That's him. Oh my God, Steven Seagal is here. He's going to destroy that cop. Ayako's eyes widened as soon as she saw him. Dad. But Seagal didn't rush. He didn't shout. He simply walked with a slow, controlled, lethal calm. The kind of calm that made every person nearby hold their breath. The officer still hadn't turned around. Still hadn't realized who he was about to confront. Still thought he was the one in control. Ayako exhaled, a mixture of relief and fear shaking through her. This was the moment everything changed. The officer tries to intimidate her, until Steven Seagal finally speaks. The officer still had his back turned, too focused on Ayako and too angry at the crowd to notice the shift in the air, the subtle ripple of silence that followed Steven Seagal wherever he walked. Ayako tried to pull her hand again, not violently, just desperately. "Please," she whispered, "just let me go." The officer snapped at her. "Stop resisting." But before he could tighten his grip again, a large hand clamped onto his wrist. Not aggressively, not painfully, just firmly enough to stop him cold. The officer stiffened. He slowly turned his head, irritation on his face. That irritation vanished. Steven Seagal towered over him, not yelling, not posturing, just staring. A calm, unblinking stare that somehow felt louder than any scream. The color drained from the officer's face. "Let go of my daughter," Seagal said softly. Soft, but dangerous. The officer blinked rapidly, confusion, fear, and pride twisting inside him. I was conducting an investigation." Seagal didn't move. He didn't even tilt his head. "Let her go." The officer released her wrist instantly, stepping back as Ayako hurried behind her father, trembling. Seagal placed a protective hand on her shoulder, not taking his eyes off the cop. The crowd murmured, "That cop is finished. He messed with the wrong family. Oh, this is about to get serious." But Seagal didn't raise his voice. Instead, he stepped slightly forward, his presence alone pushing the officer backward. "What's your badge number?" Seagal asked. The officer swallowed. "What for?" Seagal's expression hardened, not threatening, but deeply disappointed. "You assaulted a young woman. You profiled her. You grabbed her without reason. And now you're asking why I want your badge number." The officer's defensiveness flared. "I'm allowed to stop anyone I deem suspicious." "Suspicious," Seagal repeated quietly. "Which part of my daughter walking down the street was suspicious?" The officer's mouth opened, then closed. He had no answer. The crowd chimed in before he could invent one. "She was literally just walking. You grabbed her for no reason. You're racist, admit it." The officer's frustration boiled over. "Everyone stay out of this," he barked, stepping forward. "I don't care who you think you are." But Seagal simply raised a hand, not to strike, but to halt the nonsense. And it worked. The cop stopped mid-sentence. Seagal's voice dropped to a low, steady rumble. "You will not speak to her like that again. You will not threaten this crowd. And you will not misuse your badge to abuse innocent people." The officer's jaw clenched. His pride was cracking under the weight of public humiliation. He puffed up his chest. "I don't have to take orders from a celebrity," he said loudly. "I'm the authority here." A hush fell. Ayako looked terrified that the cops still wanted to push this. But Seagal didn't flinch. "I'm not giving you an order," Seagal replied calmly. "I'm giving you a chance to walk away before you make this worse for yourself." Phones zoomed in. People leaned forward. This wasn't just confrontation now. It was a showdown. The officer stepped closer again, though fear trembled under his anger. "You trying to intimidate me?" Seagal tilted his head slightly, the faintest hint of a grim smile tugging at his lips. "Son," he said quietly, "if I wanted to intimidate you, you'd already know." The crowd erupted. "Oh, he's done. Cop should resign right now." The officer turned red. His ego screamed for him to retaliate, to reclaim control, to prove he wasn't scared. So he made the worst mistake yet. He jabbed a finger toward Seagal's chest. "You think you're above the law just because you're some washed-up movie star?" Gasp shot through the crowd. Ayako covered her mouth. Even the officer realized immediately he'd crossed a line, not legally, but morally, publicly, professionally. Seagal didn't react outwardly. He simply breathed in then out. Then he leaned slightly forward, his voice a low whisper that still carried through the entire street. "The only person acting above the law," he said, "is the man who used his badge to bully a young woman." The crowd murmured in agreement. "And now," Seagal continued, "you're insulting people you should be protecting." The officer's bravado cracked. You can't talk to me like this," he stammered. "I'll call for backup." "Please do," Seagal said. The officer froze. Seagal stepped aside, gesturing to the radio clipped to his vest. "Call your supervisor," he continued. "Right now." The crowd roared in support. "Yes. Call them. Let them see what you did." The officer's hand hovered over his radio, trembling. He didn't want to call anyone. He didn't want witnesses in uniform. He didn't want accountability. But with the entire street watching, phones recording, and Steven Seagal standing before him, he had no escape. His hand finally lifted the radio. As he pressed the button, everyone knew this cop's downfall had officially begun. His backup arrives. And that's when the officer finally realizes who he messed with. The officer's thumb hovered over the radio button for a long, shaky second. The street was dead silent now. Hundreds of eyes fixed on him, dozens of phones recording, and Steven Seagal standing tall with his daughter behind him. He finally pressed the button. "This is Officer Daniels," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Requesting immediate supervision at my location. Possible hostile crowd situation." The crowd erupted with disbelief. "Hostile? You caused this." She didn't even do anything. Ayako felt her father's hand gently settle on her shoulder, grounding her. She exhaled shakily. This nightmare wasn't over yet, but with her father beside her, she felt safe for the first time since the officer grabbed her. Within minutes, sirens sounded in the distance. Officer Daniels straightened his uniform, trying to restore some dignity. He wiped sweat from his forehead, shifting uncomfortably as people whispered, pointed, and glared. He still didn't fully grasp the gravity of the situation. He only felt cornered. 2 police SUVs rolled up. 4 officers stepped out, 2 regular patrolmen and 1 woman wearing a crisp supervisor's uniform. Her expression was sharp, professional, and stern. She approached briskly. "Daniels," she said. "What's going on here?" Daniels immediately launched into a frantic explanation. This woman fit the description of a suspect. "I attempted a routine stop, but she resisted." Then the crowd got aggressive. "Lies," someone yelled. "She didn't resist a thing. He grabbed her for no reason." The supervisor held up a hand to quiet everyone, but her eyes were already narrowing at Daniels. Steven Seagal stepped forward, calm as ever. "If I may," he said quietly. The supervisor turned to him, and in one split second, her expression changed. Recognition, shock, concern. "Mr. Seagal?" she breathed. "You're involved." Daniel's head snapped around so fast his neck almost cracked. What?" he stammered. You know him?" The supervisor stared directly at her subordinate, her voice low and controlled. "You laid hands on Steven Seagal's daughter?" The color drained from Daniel's face like ink washing out of paper. Ayako swallowed hard, stepping closer to her father. "I tried to tell him," she said softly. "He didn't listen." "What do you mean he grabbed her?" the supervisor demanded. Before Daniels could jump in with excuses, a woman from the crowd stepped forward, holding her phone. "I recorded everything," she announced. From the moment he stopped her. "I did too," said another. "And me. We all did." A wave of raised phones swept through the crowd. Daniels looked like he was going to faint. The supervisor's jaw tightened. "Officer Daniels, step aside." I was just doing my job," he pleaded. "No," she cut in sharply. "You abused your authority." The crowd hummed with satisfaction. But Seagal wasn't done. He took a step toward the officer, not aggressive, but impossibly steady. "You didn't just harass my daughter," he said quietly. "You frightened her. You manhandled her. You ignored her words. A beat. You didn't see a human being. You saw someone you thought was weak." Ayako's eyes filled with tears. Hearing her father say it aloud made the fear she felt earlier feel real again. Daniels shook his head, chest heaving. "I didn't know who she was." "That's the problem," Seagal replied firmly. "You should treat every person with respect, not just the ones you recognize." The crowd erupted again. "Exactly. He's right. No badge gives you the right to bully people." Daniels ran a trembling hand through his hair. "I swear, I didn't mean, I wasn't trying to." "Enough," the supervisor snapped. You're being placed on immediate administrative leave pending investigation. Gasps. Cheers. A few people even clapped. Daniel staggered back. Leave? You're suspending me. You assaulted a civilian, she said. On camera. With multiple witnesses. But I didn't know. The supervisor's voice hardened. It doesn't matter who she is. That line hit him harder than anything Seagal had said. For a moment, Daniels looked genuinely broken, like he finally understood the weight of his actions. His knees bent slightly, as if the shame had become physical, but the humiliation wasn't complete, because another officer suddenly spoke up. Chief, he said, turning his phone around. It's already online. Everyone gasped. What do you mean online? Daniels whispered. The officer swallowed. A live stream. Someone uploaded it. It's spreading fast. Thousands of views already. Daniels felt his stomach collapse. His downfall wasn't coming. It had already begun. The supervisor turned back to Seagal, her voice softer. Mr. Seagal, I'm so sorry. This never should have happened. Seagal nodded respectfully. Thank you. My only concern is my daughter's well-being. Ayako wiped her eyes. I'm okay now, she whispered, leaning into him. The supervisor sighed deeply and shook her head. This department will handle the rest. Daniel stood there trembling, surrounded by everything he had lost, his authority, his confidence, the crowd's respect, and soon maybe even his job. He finally realized exactly who he had messed with. But more importantly, he realized why he should have never abused anyone in the first place. The video goes viral, and Steven Seagal delivers a message the whole world needed to hear. By the time Steven Seagal escorted Ayako away from the scene, her hands safely tucked in his, the crowd had already begun dispersing, but not before dozens of people stopped to thank him, offer support, or check on Ayako. She managed a small smile each time, though her eyes were still red. Thank you. I'm okay now, she repeated softly. Steven nodded to each person, a quiet gratitude in his expression. He wasn't angry anymore. He was simply relieved his daughter was safe. But behind them, the officer at the center of it all wasn't safe from anything. Officer Daniels sat on the curb, head sunk into his hands, surrounded not by authority, but by shame. His radio was turned off. His badges were removed, and the whispers of the remaining onlookers echoed around him like a verdict. He messed up big time. Career ending. And for what? Ego. His supervisor stood a few feet away, arms crossed. She wasn't celebrating his downfall, but she wasn't shielding him either. This was what accountability looked like. Within an hour, the internet exploded. The first recording hit 20,000 views within minutes. Then 100,000. Then 1 million before the hour was even over. The title alone was enough to grab global attention. Cop assaults Steven Seagal's daughter, unaware her father was right there. People didn't just watch the video. They reacted. Comments poured in by the thousands. Respect to Steven for staying calm. That cop deserves consequences. No one should be treated like this. Ayako stayed so strong, proud of her. This is exactly why we record everything. The hashtag Justice for Ayako trended in multiple countries. Clips of Seagal's calm, controlled confrontation flooded TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. Memes appeared, edits appeared, reaction videos appeared. Some focused on Seagal's legendary composure. Some focused on the injustice. Some focused on the importance of accountability. But the world's reaction was unanimous. The cop was wrong, and Ayako deserved better. Officer Daniels faces the consequences. By the next morning, Daniels found himself under full internal investigation. Multiple complaints surfaced from past incidents that had been ignored. The department moved quickly this time. They had no choice. Body cam footage, witness statements, and viral videos all told the same truth. He had abused his power, and he had done it more than once. He was suspended without pay. 2 weeks later, he was terminated. No excuses. No hiding behind a badge. His downfall became a hard lesson shared in police training discussions across the state. But Steven Seagal didn't celebrate his punishment. That wasn't who he was. Steven Seagal speaks out. A week later, Steven Seagal posted a short video online. No movie lights. No dramatic music. Just him, speaking from his heart. He placed a hand gently on Ayako's back as she stood beside him. "I appreciate the support we've received," he began. "But this isn't just about my daughter." He paused, steady and thoughtful. "This is about every person who has ever been treated unfairly. No one should be judged by appearance. No one should be mistreated because of someone else's ego. We must hold people accountable, but we must also move forward with respect and humility." Ayako nodded slowly. "I don't want people to hate the officer," she said softly. "I just want things to change." Her voice was small but powerful and instantly went viral. Steven smiled at her, then looked back at the camera. "If you believe in respect, if you believe in justice, if you believe no one should ever be abused by the people sworn to protect them," he leaned in slightly, "then remember this moment, and make sure it never happens to anyone else." The video ended there, raw, honest, real. It became more viral than the incident itself. Final call to action. Across platforms, fans repeated the message. Type respect in the comments if you stand with Ayako. Share this to spread awareness. Follow for more real stories that matter. And just like that, a moment of injustice became a worldwide message of dignity, strength, and change, all because Steven Seagal chose calm over violence, and Ayako chose courage over fear.